Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. Welcome back to Between the Sheets. We have an amazing sex therapist on here today. We have Keri Green as our host. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She specializes in sex therapy and is ASECT certified, which is an amazing certification for sex therapists. She has been working with clients for over 20 years, and she helps patients have a safe place to explore their vulnerability, to explore desires, sexuality, gender communication, trauma, all the things surrounding sex. So welcome, Keri. I'm so excited to
Thank
have you here
you.
today.
Yes, love
Yeah,
it. Thank you for having me.
absolutely. So tell me, not everybody goes to kindergarten and says, when I grow up, I'm going to be a sex therapist. So how did you get into it? Where did this come from?
It was in first grade I decided. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. Joking aside, the sex therapist part was not first grade, but literally in elementary school, I think fourth grade, maybe fifth grade, I knew I wanted to be whatever the name was, eventually learned the word is therapist, to just help other people. I was kind of the friend in the friend group, and here 40 years later, kind of still the friend in the friend group that was the one that people felt comfortable going to and talking to about things and held space for them. I didn't judge them. I was empathetic to them. So I did know from a very young age, I wanted to be a therapist. I only decided, yes, I've been licensed for over 20 years, but the sex therapist specification has really just been the last few years. I've done a lot of work over the years with couples and individuals, and sex, intimacy, desire, relationships has always come up. And I'm like, you know what? For the rest of my career, I want to focus on this. And so I became ASECT certified, and here I am.
That's awesome. It's amazing, isn't it? How once you find this niche, it's like you realize that sex isn't everything, but it touches every aspect of our lives and our relationships. And it really is a very awesome part of patients' lives to be a part of and to help them grow and achieve new satisfaction and pleasure and ideas that they store deep within themselves.
Absolutely. And I remember thinking to myself, if I can help even one client feel more, or couple, feel more comfortable with their sexuality, their
Uh-huh.
bodies, their ownness, their power, their control, their pleasure, then I've done what I, want to do. So many people do not feel comfortable. I just hung up with a couple in a session. I strictly do telehealth. And I said to them, like, when I went to go ask her a question, this is a couple that's been married for 20 years. And I went to go ask her a question and she started to giggle. And she said, I'm a little uncomfortable. And I normalized that for her. Yet this is her husband that she's been with for 20
Yeah.
plus years. But like basically asking her to name something, an accelerator, kind of back to the Emily Nagoski term from Come As You Are. I was asking her to describe an accelerator that she has in the bedroom. And she was a little embarrassed and she was able to do it. That's a win. If
Yes.
she's able to name what she wants with her body, with her sexuality, and I've helped that client, that couple do that, I love what I
Yeah.
do. I'm very blessed to do what I do.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And tell me, like, as you were talking about this accelerators and things, it makes me think, what are some of the barriers that you have found that prevent people from being easily open with their partners? What is it, stuff they grew up with, religion? Like, what kind of barriers have you seen that prevent them from having this easy communication and give those difficulties?
So I think it's all of the above. I think communication is so hard, even in non sexual topics. A lot of people are worried of saying the thing out loud and what their partner is going to think of it, whether it's
Mhm.
sexual or not. So, especially when it comes to something sexual, we don't necessarily have the confidence and the assurance that it's going to go well. Yet, if we're in hopefully a healthy relationship where our partner hasn't given us any reason to not trust them and not believe them, that they're going to be okay what we have to say,
Mhm.
we kind of are scared to even try. So, back to even what you were saying, most of us, even if we grew up in homes where religion wasn't an issue, culture wasn't an issue in the sense of shaming and stigma,
Mhm.
I always say we're still not growing up in the home where we're sitting down to, meatloaf Wednesday and mom or dad is saying, "Hey, can you pass the mashed potatoes? By the way, do you know about the newest, dildo on the market?" It doesn't happen.
Right.
Maybe as parents, we're having conversations with our kids when we have to about puberty, sex, abstinence, consent, but that's about as far as we go.
Right.
I know in schools they're not teaching beyond kind of what they have to teach. It is growing up without it being normalized. And even in the homes where it is very sex positive, it's still not where we can feel comfortable asking certain things of our parents or going to our friends. I mean, still to this day, as a 46-year-old, I'll go out to happy hour with girlfriends and they'll literally look around to make sure first, who's around before they maybe
Mhm.
bring up a very normal question or wanting to
Right.
share something that they did with their partner. So
Right.
I think it's all of the things that you said. It's society, it's getting better,
Yeah.
but sex is still not as normalized as I would love for it to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's funny because I'm sure you're very similar to me in the sense that I'll drop penis, vagina, whatever, wherever I am without two thoughts. And then my friends will look at me like, "What are you doing? Shut your
I
mouth."
know.
They're they're pretty used to it now.
My 11-year-old daughter is almost more comfortable with me using the word vagina than my
Yeah.
50-year-old, friends because I'm
Yeah.
very much trying to normalize sex, as a single mother. And that's just it. Like, I understand we do have to watch what we say if there's children around or
Yes.
depending on the environment we're in. But back to what you were saying before, if it's two adults having a conversation, two adults meaning
Mhm.
in a partnership of some sort, then how come it's so difficult to talk about?
Right.
And again, there are so many layers. Maybe we've tried with past partners and they've shut it down, they've disagreed, they've gotten mad at us,
Mhm.
they've judged us, and the moment we open our mouths and say something, especially if it's a desire we have, it's a fantasy we have, it's a
Mhm.
question we have, there's no taking it back. And
Yeah.
so it's feeling safe and comfortable enough in that relationship, whether that's a casual dating relationship or a 20-plus year marriage, sharing what our thoughts are around sex and sexuality.
Yeah. And for me personally, that has gone along with the quality of sex in that relationship. If
Sure.
there's barriers to talking about it, the sex usually isn't really that great or explorative. Whereas my boyfriend right now, we have fantastic communication about sex and everything else. And I have found that
Shows.
sometimes, yes, the most intimate of the conversations that we can have, it's mind blowing then to get the physical part with it. Like there's just, it goes exponentially better than in a relationship where you can't speak about it or you feel nervous to say, "Hey, I really like this better than this," or "Could you touch me like this instead?" Or,
Hmm.
you know, when I have my period, I don't like to have sex, or I do like to have sex, or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. Those are just basic things, but you have to have that level, in my opinion. You have to be able to talk to your partner about sex, or you shouldn't be having sex.
I agree. And the emotional vulnerability that comes with that for most people is a much higher risk than just doing
Mm,
it. And I don't
yeah.
mean just doing it against, without consent, but I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with where they've said, I didn't really want to. It was just easier. And again,
Yep.
there's the difference between what we would call sexual assault versus I didn't
Right.
really want to give my boyfriend a blowjob, but I knew it would turn into a whole thing if I didn't. So I just went ahead and did it. That's not what we want to do. And that communication piece is huge. You know,
Mhm.
I try and normalize sex as much as I can in conversations, even though I also at the same time know it is different than any other possible topic. But I might say to a couple, like, you didn't have any, issues with letting your partner know you didn't feel like going to the beach this weekend. You
Mhm.
prefer to go to the park.
Yeah.
How come that was something that you were able to say but you weren't able to say, "Hey, babe, I don't really feel like you going down on me tonight. I'd rather if,
Mhm.
you're willing to just give me a really nice, massage."
Yeah.
And again, it's because they are very different things. but they don't
Right.
have to be that far apart.
Right. Intimacy doesn't have to just equal penetration and orgasm. There are
Yeah.
so many ways
Yeah.
to explore intimacy. And I think having that conversation of, hey, I'm just not in the mood for like a full bang out session tonight, but I am in the mood to touch and cuddle and give massages, maybe even make out a little bit, but I'm not feeling penetration tonight
Yeah.
for whatever reason. And I
Yeah.
think that's so great to be able to have that openness and that communication and not immediately go to, oh, because I don't turn you on anymore, or oh, you don't want me anymore, or something like that. It's like, that's not what I said at all. Just in this moment, I
Hmm.
don't want that particular activity.
And I understand it's very hard to not take certain things personally when it does have to come to sex. But to mirror exactly what you just said, I talk a ton in my sessions with clients around validation and clarification. So if a partner comes to you and is very specific in what they'd like to do, rather than shut it down and say no, first acknowledge and appreciate that they even are coming to you about said thing and offering said thing. Wow, honey, thank you for offering to X, Y, or Z. I
Mhm.
really appreciate it. And not but, this is how I'm feeling. And this is what I would love to see happen. And the person
Mm,
who offered example A in the first place, if all they want is example A, penetrative sex, and the partner's responding with, I don't want penetrative sex tonight, and here's why, but I would love for you to go down on me. And the
uh-huh.
person is like, well, no, sorry. If we're not having penetrative sex, I don't want anything at all. They have
Yeah.
that choice.
Yep.
But I always say, see if there is another option. Because
Yeah.
what I am really sad about is how many missed opportunities there are for couples to connect
Uh-huh.
intimately, especially if we're calling that sexual intimacy, because they have it in their head. It has to be intercourse. It has to be penetrative sex. It has to be an orgasm. It has to be this. It has
Uh-huh.
to be that. Well, it's easy then to say no versus
Right.
if it's, you know what, I'm feeling close to you as well. How about we do this thing? And then hopefully the
Yeah.
person will be good with what, is being suggested.
Yeah. Another scenario that I have experienced with patients, and I'm curious what your advice is and what your opinion is on this. I'm thinking as a female. If she has faked her orgasm from the beginning because she knew he wanted to please her, it wasn't doing it. Maybe she doesn't even know how to get one herself. Who knows? But
Hmm.
she faked it. And then she's faked it ever since because she faked it the first time. So now he
Too
keeps
late
doing the
now.
same
Can't go
thing.
back.
Right. How do you work through that, admit it to your partner, move past that? Like, what does that look like in your line of work? Because for me, I just tell them because I'm not worried about being a therapist. I'm like, well, just tell them it doesn't work for you. Go figure out what works for you. Play with yourself and then redirect. But obviously, that's not always the healthiest way to have that
Yeah.
conversation. So, how does that work?
So I don't think I'd have to stop and think about it. I don't think I've ever had a couple where that has come up in a session.
Okay.
I've had plenty of clients who have faked it, but I don't think I've
Hmm.
ever had a client say from day one, I've never had one and I've faked it the
Okay.
entire time. I would want to better understand, I would first normalize it because that's
Yeah.
very normal
Hmm.
with the woman. And I would want to better understand what is her history with
Mm.
experiencing an orgasm. Has she
Yeah.
been able to by herself? If so, how? Has she ever with a previous partner? If so, how? Because there's a difference between I've never had one versus I've
Hmm.
had one, just not with this particular partner. Those
Right.
experiences I've worked with. I would absolutely encourage her, whether this was 3 months into a relationship or 3 years into a relationship, to be honest with her partner, because I'm sure she would want the same honesty back.
Mhm.
Yet it's one of those things, once that's the cat's out of the bag, there is no going back. And so I'd
Uh,
also want to better understand, how do you think your partner would respond to this? Are they going to be
yeah.
mad? Are they going to look at it as, my gosh, if I can't trust you with this, then what else can I not trust you with? I
Yeah.
would actually probably encourage, if I wasn't seeing them as a couple, to possibly offer to be there for that conversation to help support her and to help normalize what his responses are. I would hope, though, that it would be an opportunity for them to be even more close than they were
Hmm.
before because the honesty is there, the truth is out, and then hopefully help them both get to a place where she can experience one,
Yeah.
especially if she has by herself or with, another partner. The sad reality is a lot of women fake
Yeah.
because of the reasons you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get it too. I am a big fan of don't fake it because if you do, they will continue to do the same thing that didn't get you off that time because they
They
thought
think
it
it's
did.
working.
Right. So don't tell them it's working if it's not. But it is difficult, especially when you're in a new relationship and you want that closeness and you want them to know they're pleasing you. But just don't fake it. Just be honest. And if you need something slightly different, ask for it. I think that's the way better route to go.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it also is psychoeducation for the male partner in this possible example, that this is very common for a lot of women. And there are certain ways a woman is going to be able to have an orgasm more easily than
Hmm.
another way. And it's not a challenge. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the guy who's going to make it happen. It's,
Right.
again, normalizing where she's coming from and working together. It's a
Yeah.
dance in a sense of how it's going to work. But I absolutely am a very, very, very big advocate of honesty from the very beginning in a
Yeah.
relationship, whether that's around orgasms or otherwise. If you haven't experienced something that your partner is asking you, be honest about it. If you
Hmm.
have, own it.
Yep.
All of us have a past. Maybe we've done things sexually that we're not going to do anymore. Heck, we might have done things in our past that we'd love the opportunity to do again.
Yep.
I just feel those conversations with a intimate partner is only, hopefully only going to have you grow closer together.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I think that honesty is definitely the best policy, as they say. And especially when it comes to this particular part of a relationship, I think it's so important because it is a difficult subject for some people to talk about. And so if you are going to not give the full truth or sugarcoat it to make them feel better, then you're going to make it even more difficult to have those conversations going forward. So, be kind, but be honest, I think is a great, great way to say. So, the next thing that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about is what if you don't really find your partner sexy anymore? You don't you know that physical attraction, whether it's your partner had kids and their body's different, they gained weight, they lost hair, they whatever, and that attraction just isn't quite there anymore.
I think that's a hard one. And I've been in sessions before where the client is telling their partner for the first time with me present, I am just not as attracted to you anymore. I want to be. There's a difference between I don't want to be and I've accepted it. And then what does that mean for the relationship versus
Yeah.
I want to be, I just am not there. And I think a big part of it is how much did we focus on the physical attraction in the first place? We're
Yeah.
looking at future partners differently in our 20s than we maybe are in our 40s and 50s.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, the physical attraction has to be there. It needs to be there even to have a conversation across the table from the other person, to be able to
Yeah.
want to look at them, then to take that to a deeper level of being with them naked and having
Right.
sexual experiences with them. Sure, the amount of physical attraction we need for an intimate partner is very different than we would feel about a platonic
Mhm.
friend. So again, it's kind of peeling back the onion. What did you find attractive, both physically and not physically, about your partner when you first met?
Mhm.
What is it about their physical appearance that has changed? How much of it really is, they have gained weight. They don't take care of themselves as much as I would like them to,
Mhm.
versus non-sexual things that are, or I'm sorry, non-physical things that are happening that are making us less attractive. So they may actually not look that much different, but they're not as romantic as they used to be. They
Mm.
may have only gained 5 pounds. You're talking as if they gained 50 pounds because they're not as generous as they used to be with what they buy you for your birthday.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean our partner doesn't actually change physically, but let's be real. No one's going to look the same at 20 as they do at 40, as they do at 60,
Right.
unless we pay a lot of money to make that happen.
Yeah.
So it is so important that as we date and get to a relationship with someone, the physical part is important, but it's who they are on the inside, as they say, that really is going to keep that attraction going. And I'll be honest, there are situations where we have lost physical attraction
Mhm.
and sometimes we can't get it back.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily anyone's fault. But I think it would be very difficult to have an enjoyable, pleasurable sexual experience with someone that we no longer are attracted to physically And then
Yeah.
that may lead to a very hard conversation about where does that relationship go from there.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense because I can sit here and even not in a partnership, but just in meeting people and whatever, and you can think, oh man, that person over there is pretty attractive. And then you hear them be a total asshole to the waiter, and you're like, oh, they're not really that attractive
Yeah.
anymore. Or vice versa. They're like, oh, yeah, they're all right. And then you see them do the kindest, most generous act, and you're like, wow, that person's really good look. And so I see what you're saying about it might not actually be their physical self that has changed all that much, but maybe they lost a job and they're not working very hard anymore, not motivated to find a new job. Maybe
Yeah.
it's, they don't wear makeup, though she doesn't wear makeup anymore, doesn't do her hair very often, just wears yoga pants all the time. And you loved when she got herself dressed up and ready. And so I can really see what you're saying with that. That's really interesting. So do you help people talk through that then and like say, hey, it's not that I don't find you attractive, but I really liked it when you used to
Yep.
get yourself
Yep.
ready for the day and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the longer we're in a relationship, we lose sight of that and we take the relationship and the person for granted. Your yoga
Yeah.
pants example was perfect.
Yeah.
We do get a little bit more dressed up. We do spend a little bit more time, on our physical appearance, on sending the good morning text, on giving
Mhm.
the, physical touch. And then as the relationship goes on after years and years, we just stop doing it. And then we
Yeah.
wonder why we don't feel as connected to our partner. We're not as comfortable when they want to have physical intimacy. So
Yeah.
we have to take responsibility in our relationships, what we have also done to not keep that, spark or that
Mhm.
passion or that flirtiness going. One of the best sayings I've ever heard from Dr. Emily Morse, I love her,
Mhm.
sexwithemily.com, is foreplay begins the minute you wake up. So
Yes.
basically what that means is when if you were to, walk up to someone on the street and say, "Tell me, what is your definition of foreplay?" Most people would maybe giggle because you're asking a random stranger what their definition of
Right.
foreplay is, but they would probably say kissing, oral. They go into the actual sexual acts,
Mhm.
which of course, those are forms of foreplay.
Yeah.
What about good morning, honey, how did you sleep? I'm
Yes.
going to go get myself a cup of coffee. I'm going to get you one as well. That
Mhm.
midday text, miss you, can't wait to see you tonight. I'm looking forward to watching that movie together. That's
Yep.
foreplay because foreplay is connection. Now,
Yes.
I always say to clients, don't do any of those gestures with the expectation of something sexual happening. But you can't go wrong as long as it's genuine.
Yeah.
Sending a text in the middle of the day, thinking of you, can't wait to see you,
Yep.
most people aren't going to be offended by that and disgusted by that and upset by that. They're going to be like, ooh, they're thinking of me. That's really
Yep.
nice. And enough of those gestures throughout the day is going to increase the likelihood, again, never a guarantee, but increase the likelihood of intimacy, whether that's
Yep.
sexual or otherwise.
Right. Absolutely. And I think it goes back to, a lot of people will say there's mismatched libidos. And I think what it
Hmm.
actually comes down to isn't so much being mismatched as it is not giving each other that foreplay that they need. So
Hmm.
for, one partner, it might be more of the visual, physical stimulus of the making out and the massaging and
Yeah.
things like that. In another partner, it might be more of the, oh my gosh, you made the reservation, you got the babysitter, you texted me, you can't wait to see me, you texted me,
Yeah.
hey, can you wear that blue dress that I really like tonight? So all of us feel our foreplay and what turns us on in a different way. And so I love that what you're saying is start in the morning. That's always my thing too. There's always room to turn each other on outside of the bedroom. So by the time it is time for intimacy, you're already fired up
You're
and
already
you're
on
already
your
starting to be
way.
aroused. Exactly. I love
Absolutely.
it.
And back to, I think, what you said earlier around period sex, that comes up a lot. I always
Mhm.
joke. First of all, I always say to clients, I'm not here to try and talk you into anything. Whatever you're comfortable with, you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And whatever you're not comfortable with, you're not comfortable with. Yet, there are absolute body parts that can still be utilized even when you have your period, whether that's
Yes.
fully your partner or even your own body minus, your vulva area. The time of a period doesn't have to be 3 to 5 days, everything's off the table. Or
Right.
I have one couple where she is very against any form of sexual intimacy on either body during
Mm.
her period. I've encouraged them to come up with non sexual activities that they could do only during the time of her period. So
Oh,
they look forward to it because it used to be the husband would be like, oh, she has her period, dreading
right.
it. Now it's
Sure.
something to look forward to because they're only, I'm making up an example, this isn't it, working on their puzzle those days of the month.
Yeah.
And also, regardless of how our bodies are feeling, we can always have a conversation about
Mhm.
sex. So
Yeah.
even if sex, the act itself, isn't happening, I feel back to the emotional intimacy piece we were talking about, a conversation around sex could
Mhm.
be so much more intimate
Yeah.
than if you actually went and had any form of sexual experience.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. The other thing that I like to talk to my patients about is sex before date night. So you're getting ready, you got the music on, you're getting pretty, you feel really good and sexy, your belly's not full from dinner yet.
Yep.
Have sex before you go out. And it works for a couple things. I have a lot of guys because I work in urology and sex med who need Viagra and Cialis to get their erections.
Yep.
Viagra works best if you take it on an empty stomach. So if you take it while you're getting ready, you can have sex before you go to dinner. Then you don't feel gross afterwards. You're not too tired and too full and all the things. It's like a rule in my relationship, especially if Mexican is on the table. It is sex before dinner.
Have you heard of the libido fairy?
Yes.
So
Yes.
one of her things is fuck first.
Yep.
I'd say excuse my language, but I'm not going to say excuse my language. That is a rule. And so is scheduling sex. She's like, we don't
Yes.
want spontaneous sex because we both need to know it's happening so we can get ourselves ready, whether
Yep.
that's physically, shaving or
Mhm.
lotion or whatever you're doing to
Yeah.
physically get prepared for sex. And also the emotional mental piece of it.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
some people are very spontaneous desire. They don't want to talk
Mhm.
about it. They don't want to plan it. They are very
Yes.
turned on where it's randomly happening. But I do agree with many benefits having sex before going out on a date night.
Yeah.
And then just also having it to talk about when you're on your way to the restaurant or while you're
Yeah.
sitting waiting for the comedian, to get on stage like, ooh, I really liked it when you did this. Or, I can't
Yeah.
wait until we can try this thing again. Because there's a lot of pressure going on a date night.
Mhm.
Again, whether it's someone you're newly dating or your partner of 20 years, it's almost expected and assumed. We
Right.
got a babysitter. We dressed up. We dropped a couple $100 on this nice dinner. We have to now go home and have
Right.
sex. And
Yep.
then who's really wanting to do that if it's feeling more like a chore and a checkbox than
Right.
I can't wait to go home and be intimate with my partner.
Yeah.
Number one, just because you had sex before the date doesn't mean you can't have sex again
That's
after.
right.
Or you do something else. Maybe the man isn't
Mhm.
able to
Yep.
perform again, or the woman doesn't want to. Well, there's so many other things you could do after the dinner date or
Yeah.
whatever the date is that is still incredibly intimate.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of scheduled sex too, because like you said, when you're early in your relationship and you're only dating and you're going on 1 or 2 dates a week, if you're at the point where you have entered into physical intimacy in your relationship, you're going to have sex those nights. So you have planned sex ever since the beginning of your relationship. There's no difference in planning it
I
once you're
know.
10 years in. It's a great idea. And yes, if you have spontaneous sex at other points in
Great.
times,
It's
great.
added.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
And I
love
say
it.
to people all the time, like, I very much try and play devil's advocate as often as I can.
Mhm.
I get that we live very busy lives. We're following a schedule all day long between our alarm going off in the morning. We have to drop our kids at a certain time at school. The meeting is at a
Mhm.
certain time. So I get that we don't want to make sex another thing that we have to schedule. So I can see
Right.
that side of it. I can also see the side of it of if you are not naturally making time for it, that it needs to be scheduled, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It shouldn't matter what it takes to make it happen as long as it's happening. And there
Right.
are some couples who would very much like to have sex 1 to 2 times a week with their partner, but before they know it, 2 weeks have gone by and they
Mhm.
haven't had sex at all.
Right.
So let's just name the reality of it's not happening naturally. So what's
Right.
wrong with agreeing that on Saturday morning, before you get out of bed, you're going to make some time for intimacy?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it has to be what both partners or multiple partners, depending on what the relationship is,
Correct.
are in agreement. That's
Yep.
what it all comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another aspect of scheduled is like you were saying, so you can prepare. There are a lot of more so women than men that have responsive desire. And so
Hmm.
maybe it's listening to an erotic book on your way home or
Mhm.
reading one or, listening to certain music that gets you turned on or something that throughout the day you've done little things
To
so
build
that by
it.
the time it is intimate time, you're already aroused because it takes you so long to get that
Yeah.
arousal. And there's nothing wrong with being that person. That's just who you are and chemically how you function. So if you have scheduled sex, you have time to work through all of that and you're not feeling bad about yourself. You're not unsatisfied because you didn't even get close to an orgasm and your partner's
Yeah.
already done and asleep.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of benefits to it.
Well, and I haven't completed it yet, but Dr. Emily Nagoski's most recent book, Come Together, is all
Mhm.
about the importance of how to maintain sexual desire in longer term relationships. And the
Yeah.
number one thing is that both people want it, that they're
Mhm.
prioritizing it. It's never about the couples who have sex the most are the happiest. There is
Yep.
no research that proves how the more often you have sex, the happier you are, or that the sex is better. No,
Right.
what it comes down to is the longing and wanting and desire of both people to make it happen. And she speaks a lot about the longevity of a healthy long term sexual relationship is that both people have the responsive desire
Mhm.
more than the spontaneous desire. Because, like you said, and it's not just the woman, a man could feel the same
Yep.
way. They've got to lead up to it. And again, we're not doing that much differently than other aspects of our lives. I
Right.
mean, growing up, if I knew I had a test on Friday, I wasn't waiting until walking into the classroom to study for the test. I was starting to prepare for it days ahead of time.
Yep.
So I was more confident and ready when the time came for the test. We're doing so many of these things in other aspects of our lives, but for some reason, when it comes to sex, it's so different. And
Right.
again, I want to normalize it. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. When you said it struck me, you just said the word uncomfortable or discomfort. What about your patients who struggle with their own self esteem and their own body image? That it's not that they're no longer attracted to their partner. They can't understand why their partner would be attracted to them and want to be intimate with them. How do you help bust through that?
So back to the couple I literally just had a session with. Her weight fluctuates a lot, as a lot of women experience that, especially the older we get. And she doesn't believe her husband when he says, "You're beautiful when you're at this weight. You're beautiful when you're at that weight. You're beautiful when you're wearing this. You're beautiful when
Hmm.
you're wearing that." She actually literally calls him a liar. And I said, "Well, let's start with not calling him a liar, because I have two rules as a couples therapist. And the first rule is we're never allowed to tell our partner that their feelings are wrong. Doesn't mean we
Mm,
have to agree with them, but we can't tell them they're wrong. And my second rule is you're never allowed to throw out the D word, which in this case is divorce, unless you really mean it, because it's incredibly hurtful."
yeah.
So back to the example you gave, if we have that negative relationship with ourselves,
Hmm.
then it's going to be harder to feel more comfortable in our bodies. And I believe how comfortable we feel in our bodies is going to absolutely show in a sexual experience. So I encourage all my clients to have some form of a sexual relationship with themselves. I always say a couple is actually three parts of that relationship. It's the sexual relationship partner one has with themselves, it's the sexual relationship partner two has with themselves, and it's the relationship that they have together. And
Hmm.
I'm not even saying that has to mean masturbating or whatever. It just means, where am I at with the comfort of my body? And how is that going to play out in a sexual experience? So, an idea I actually gave to this couple right before us, going on this podcast together was to her, when you are feeling less comfortable with your body, but
Hmm.
you are still willing and wanting to have sex, I said you can have it be darker in the room.
Yeah.
You can cover certain parts of your body with clothing. There's nothing wrong with that. Or I said, and the husband actually liked this suggestion, I said, blindfold him. Then he can't look at you.
Ooh,
He
I
can't
like it.
see what
Yeah.
you're feeling or what you're feeling a little self conscious about. There are many options to be creative, yet a lot of the work I do, especially with women, is around body image and
Hmm.
comfort with their bodies. And that starts with the relationship we have with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those suggestions. That's great. And it's nice because it's not a light switch. Even if she's working on herself, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden be super comfortable and confident. And so it gives someone something tangible to work on and some ideas to work be with their partner
Mhm.
while they're working on themselves and feeling better about themselves. Those are great tips. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Because I even said to her, I said, when do you feel like what would a time frame be that you would feel
Yeah.
comfortable with your body? And her answer was, I don't know, but it will be a while. And my thought is, I don't want you to have to wait until you reach this ideal weight on the scale or the ideal way that this, dress fits you. Because we're
Yeah.
always going to say something could be better. We're very critical of ourselves, some much more than others. So that's when those suggestions came up until you possibly, and she's on the track to do so, but until you reach this goal weight, what are ways that
Mhm.
you will still be comfortable sharing your body, with your partner?
Yeah.
And so those were
Yeah,
some of the
that's
things
really
we came up with.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. And what else do you kind of see as like themes that recurrently show up that we haven't touched on yet?
I think a big theme that comes up, it's more so brought to my attention by the male in the relationship of a heterosexual relationship is confusion, basically confusion of where did we kind of go off the tracks, so to speak? Because when I first met you, dot, 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 dot. When I first met you, you were very into this. When I first met you, we couldn't keep our hands off of each other. When I first met you, you enjoyed dressing up. Now, whether now is a year later or 10 years later, you don't do blank. And it's
Uh,
very accusatory blaming, which we've got to start with just the way we're approaching the conversation
mhm.
versus I miss when we used to blank. What really made me want to date you and be in a relationship with you was how open minded you were to blank. And
Yeah,
sometimes, again, it's not just sexual. When we first met, you always wanted to go hiking with me. Now I can't even get you to go on a walk around the block with the dog.
right.
So I try and bring in non sexual examples too. But again, back to normalizing, we're not necessarily the same at 45 as we were at 25. But back
Uh-huh.
to the what you were talking about earlier in the conversation around faking, a lot of women, not all women, maybe some men too, but a lot of women feel like in the beginning of a relationship, they have to present themselves in a certain way sexually that really
Mhm.
isn't them. Because he's not
Yeah,
going to be interested in me if I don't put out by the third date, if I don't wear 6-inch heels, if I don't let him do this thing to me or talk this way to me. And that's really not who they are. Or
uh-huh.
maybe it's kind of who they are, but then they don't want to do it anymore. But they don't
Yeah,
tell their partner, I'm not into this anymore. Again, it's back to that people pleasing. So
yeah.
it is surprising to the man 5 years later, 10 years later, that it's not the same. And
Mhm.
then it's sometimes the woman for the first time, well, haha, that's not really who I was anyway. So now we're having that conversation.
Yeah,
And that's a hard
that's
conversation
tough,
also.
for
And what do you
sure.
do with that? Like, well, I wish you were honest from the beginning. Well, I'm sorry. I, didn't want to lose you. And here we are now. And again, what do we do with that? Because if one is
Right,
much more sexual than the other,
right.
that's hard. That's very much mismatched desire.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is very tough. And I'm sure the layers of that with how much trust that breaks in other areas of the relationship now. Well, you said you always like this, going shopping or,
Yeah.
doing the hiking like you mentioned. And is that true? Because this part's not true. So I can just imagine the snowball effect that would have.
Well, and again, another reason why from the get go, honesty is the best policy. I always say
Yeah.
we are allowed to change our minds. Maybe the
Yep.
person was willing to go on a hike on Saturday when they were asked about it on Monday. But then by Wednesday, when they knew they didn't want to go on the hike anymore, they owed it to their partner, their friend, whomever. Hey, I've changed my mind. Can we do this instead? Or you still go on the hike. I'll meet up with you afterwards for lunch. The problem is, first and foremost, when we agree to something that we're actually never in agreement to, shouldn't be doing that ideally. The second issue is when we do agree to it and then we change our mind, but don't let the person in on our new plan.
Yeah.
And again, it's that fear of, I don't want to disappoint them. Well, guess what? You're going to disappoint them a lot more if you wait
Right.
till the last minute to let them know, or you go years and years of not telling them. And then they
Yeah.
do have a right, people have a right to feel however they want, but they have even more of a justification behind being confused because
Right.
they're looking at it as you used to be this way and now you're not.
Yeah.
So a lot of my couples conversations are working around that dynamic, how
Yeah.
we change. And the long-lasting relationships last because each person is willing to go through those changes with their partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think those are such great points. And man, we've covered a lot tonight. I'm really excited about this podcast because this is a great episode. I appreciate you being here so much.
Oh, thank you.
Before we wrap, tell people how can they find you? How can they work with you? What do you offer?
Thank you. Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is my website. So it's my name, Keri Green, LMFT.com. I love working with all types of clients and couples. I only offer telehealth, which allows me to work with people in different areas. Um, yeah, I mean, I love what I do and I appreciate you having me as a guest.
Yeah, you're welcome. I am so excited to have had you on here tonight. It really like it's very eye-opening to talk to someone in the same realm but with different aspects of how we care for our patients and it's really neat. I just really appreciate your knowledge and your kindness and your thoroughness on this topic. And I will certainly put your website in the show
Thank
notes
you.
as well so people
Yes.
can find you. Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great week and go have some fun between the sheets. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.